President Buhari says current lockdown in some parts of the country crucial and would last as long as necessary to defeat the spread of coronavirus. Nigeria's Center for Disease Control (NCDC) announces 5 new COVID-19 cases, bringing total in the country to 323. On the international front, Beijing faces diplomatic crisis after reports of mistreatment of Africans in China. And in sport, Swiss prosecutor drops case against Blatter.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The freedom we ask you to willingly forsake today will last as long as our scientific advisors declare they are necessary, but they are essential world over to halt and defeat the spread of this virus. These are President Muhammadu Buhari's words to Nigerians, given hints of a likely extension of the lockdown order in some parts of the country as a result of the ravaging coronavirus disease. While the lockdown order could be indefinitely extended, the president said Nigerians should remain in their homes in the interest of the entire country. The two most affected parts of the country, Lagos and Abuja, announced on Sunday they had each discharged 4 new COVID-19 patients. At the same time, Kano recorded its first case of the deadly virus. While many religious leaders in some parts of the country are said to have pressured state governments to relax their lockdown orders, Director General of the Progressive Governors Forum, Dr. Salihu Lukman, is quoted as saying that the poor state of Nigeria's hospitals should give authorities a pause. They say if Nigeria should fail in curbing the spread of the virus, the experiences in Italy, Spain, the United States and France would be like child's play. It is always expected that every move of the president would have those who embrace and some who oppose it. It's not any different in his latest hint of an extension of the lockdown in Abuja, Lagos and Ogun. Civil rights advocacy group Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria says it condemns what it calls the president's order of an indefinite lockdown, even though we won't find out until tonight whether the president would extend the order. Buhari says his move is an attempt to contain coronavirus spread. Huriwa says the president and his COVID-19 political task force are basically lifting measures enacted by civilized and highly sophisticated nations and just dumping them on the Nigerian system. The group says those advanced nations have transparent and accountable provisions of reliefs and palliatives for their citizens. It says those countries also have a range of systematic economic recovery and growth plan. Huriwa says Nigeria has none of those provisions and plans. It accused the president of not communicating enough with the Nigerian public, but has been hiding in what it called the fortified mansions. The group says this is a sign of a clear failure of charismatic leadership, which the country needs in these times of health emergency. The group says there are grave human rights implications in locking down hungry, jobless, and desperate populations of mostly youngsters. Huriwa says the government should consider the underlying result of asking people to stay at their houses without electricity and food. Coronavirus cases in the country have inched up to 323 after the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) confirmed 5 new cases on Sunday. The center posted on its Twitter page, Lagos and Kwara State accounted for 2 each of the new cases, while Katsina recorded 1. Meanwhile, Minister of Health Dr. Asage Ehanire says the federal government did not invite the Chinese doctors who arrived in the country last week to help with the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic. The minister said that China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation decided to bring in the doctors as part of its corporate social responsibility. And Kwara State Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak says the 2 new cases recorded in the state brings to 4 the total number of cases in the state. The governor said all hands must be on deck to rid the state of the virus. He called on Kwara residents to do their part in maintaining personal hygiene and to stay at home and observe social distancing. Easter celebrations were not the same this year, as most churches were shut and the Christian faithful stayed home to watch online miniature church services. The Arewa Consultative Forum has commended churches and Christian religious leaders for shutting their doors as a result of the lockdown. ACT says this was an indication that Nigerians can be law-abiding. The Arewa Consultative Forum called on Christians to use the Easter period and the current lockdown order to exhibit the spirit of patriotism, religious tolerance and love for one another. The forum said in a statement in Kaduna on Saturday, it rejoiced with all Christians for the peaceful Easter celebrations and urged them to emulate Jesus Christ in their daily lives. Nigerians celebrated a subdued Easter just like the rest of the world did as coronavirus pandemic ravages through the globe. Even the Pope had to conduct a virtual service in an empty St. Peter's Square, and most of the world did the same, including Nigerian churches. Kelechi Mekalam witnessed a few online Easter church services.
It's not the typical Easter celebration for the Utoros, a Christian family in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. They would usually be ceremonially dressed and join other worshippers in their local church for a celebratory service. Though dressed up for their white-themed service, the Utoros would be joining in virtually from their home. It's a deviation occasioned by the coronavirus shutdown.
It's a 3-day affair. We start on Friday with a Good Friday service in the evening. Saturdays we do food distribution to poor communities, and then on Sunday we'll have our Easter service. It's usually like a grand affair, but this year it's a bit different. The change it's unusual, it's far from the norm, but it is what we have to do to keep the virus from spreading.
The pain points in all this is that that's prevented a gathering of people together, so usually there is some sort of energy, when you gather together to praise God and all that. So, but apart from that, what we've been able to do is to be creative in terms of using digital solutions.
Their pastor, Wale Afelumo, pulls an average attendance of 600 worshippers every Sunday. Since government announced a ban on mass gatherings, he had come up with the best way to keep his congregation connected, leveraging on technology.
For us as a church, it's just the use of internet, reaching out to our members. We started what we call a fingers crossed challenge. We formed the shape of the cross with our fingers, took pictures and sent across social media platforms so that we still keep the image of the cross, the reason for the season, in the fore of people's minds.
Nigeria has recorded over 300 COVID-19 cases, with 25% recovery and 3% death rates. Authorities continue in the battle against rapid spread of the virus. Although Easter remains a significant celebration, the Christian community here believes the lockdown is in the best interest of all citizens.
Coming up, African news. Hopes of announcing the DRC as Ebola-free dashed by 2 new cases, both of whom have died. And later, international news. Beijing faces diplomatic crisis after reports of mistreatment of Africans in China.
You are watching ANN.
Correct, Costi. Give me 100 naira rice and add 888 join up. Yeah. On top. Yes. Yes.
Which time I go be this now? Not be the same 100 when everybody pays this morning.
They no use code.
Which code?
Oh boy, no don't get it for market to get better wolf. 888 now even the code yo. Have you?
Madam, I beg, serve me 888.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In African stories, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has planned to make a hearty announcement today that Ebola had been eradicated from the country after nearly 50 days without a new case. But that plan had been shattered by the discovery of 2 new cases a few days before that landmark announcement. The 2 patients, a 26-year-old man and an 11-month-old baby, had died of the disease over the weekend. Chris Kamringa has the story.
The new confirmed case of Ebola was found in a 26-year-old man in the eastern town of Bennett. Congolese health workers say the man consulted a traditional healer when he fell ill and got treated for poison. He was later transferred to a health facility after his condition deteriorated. But he died there. Tests conducted confirmed he died of Ebola. His death has dashed the hopes of many Congolese who were expecting the outbreak to be declared over.
We are very disappointed, but it is not a big surprise for us. I think that we will try to deal with this new case with the experience we have. And I'm not sure that it will be a new outbreak. I think that it will be just a case which will be encountered quickly.
Health experts from the World Health Organization and the DRC have sent teams to start tracing the people who came into contact with the patient and investigate the case.
We have to take care of the cases. We have to do all the package of activities and wait till the end of the treatment of the last cases before start counting the 42 days.
According to the WHO, the outbreak can only be declared over after 42 days elapse without any new infection. This is the 10th Ebola outbreak in the DRC. It has occurred in a region racked by conflict. Authorities have recorded 300 attacks on health facilities and 11 deaths of health workers since the outbreak began in 2018. The new case has taken the response effort back to square one. The DRC had gone for 52 days without recording any new Ebola case. The discovery of the case in Beni has come at a time that the country is grappling with the coronavirus pandemic and other diseases that have claimed thousands of lives.
3 of Uganda's 53 COVID-19 patients have been discharged from hospital on Saturday after fully recovering from the deadly virus. The health ministry says another 15 patients are scheduled to be discharged today. This is the first batch of recoveries for Uganda since the first case was confirmed nearly a month ago. Reporter Leon Sionj has the details.
Joyous celebrations for these frontline medical workers. They are celebrating the release of 3 COVID-19 patients from this referral hospital. It's been 21 days since the first COVID-19 patient was admitted here.
We don't go back to our families because we are contacts. We don't go back to our families. So for us, seeing our patients improving and being discharged, it gives us a great joy and encourages.
The patients, all male, now coronavirus-free, were not shown protect their privacy. The discharge of patients has indeed offered a glimmer of hope as the country continues to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Health officials are confident many more will soon leave this facility. 15 more are expected to be discharged in the next few days. But as they hope to return to their homes, they could have another battle to fight: stigma.
I'm calling upon the community, please accept these people because you need to support them psychologically, accept them, give them a lot of hope.
The government has also put up strict measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Schools have been closed and a lockdown imposed.
The progress we have made as a country in the war against this pandemic is partly attributed to this foresight and other preparation.
While some significant progress can now be celebrated, these doctors and nurses still know too well that the fight is far from over.
Morocco has confirmed 97 new cases of coronavirus infection over the weekend. Now its national infection rate stands at 1,545. The Ministry of Health said over the weekend recovery cases had risen to 146 with 111 deaths. The ministry said the most affected area is the Casablanca-Setet region, with nearly 29% of all the cases, and more than 3,500 contact persons are still in confinement and under medical supervision.
When we return, international news. Beijing faces diplomatic crisis after report of mistreatment of Africans in China. And later, sport. Swiss prosecutor drops case against Blatter.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international front, despite being one of the worst hit countries in the COVID-19 pandemic, Spain has decided to relax strict lockdown measures that have brought its economy to a standstill. Workers in manufacturing, construction sectors and some services have been allowed to return to work, but must stick to strict safety guidelines. The rest of the population must still remain at home, and nearly 17,500 persons with COVID-19 have died in Spain, but the rate of new infections has been falling. Spain's health ministry said on Monday the daily number of deaths had dipped slightly, with 517 reported in the previous 24 hours, compared with 619 on Sunday. The official total death tally is now 17,489. On Monday, the government lifted some of the restrictions put in place last month and now allow businesses to reopen whose employees cannot work remotely. Head of the regional administration in Catalonia, Torra, said he would not comply with any easing of the lockdown for non-essential workers. He says this is because the risk of a new outbreak at its second lockdown is enormous. China has reported its highest number of new coronavirus cases in more than 5 weeks. And Chinese officials say mainland China had 169 new confirmed cases of infection, with 61 of them described as asymptomatic COVID-19. The government said 98 of the cases were imported by those arriving from abroad. The total figure represents the highest number of new cases since early March. This latest development has raised concerns about a second wave of infections in China, which was the original epicenter of the pandemic. The latest figures in China are more than 82,000 infections, with more than 3,000 deaths. China's cases peaked in mid-February, and earlier this month, Beijing reported its first day of no new cases since the outbreak was first identified in late December. But China has been accused of downplaying the severity of the crisis at a time when, if it had been more forthright, may have given the rest of the world a clearer picture and more time to prepare a response. Beijing is facing a diplomatic crisis in Africa after reports of alleged coronavirus-related discrimination against African nationals in China sparked widespread anger across the continent. African students and expatriates in the southern Chinese city were seen in a video subjected to forced coronavirus testing and arbitrary 14-day self-quarantine, regardless of recent travel history. Large numbers of African nationals were also left homeless after being evicted by landlords and rejected by hotels in the city. Several African governments, media outlets and citizens reacted angrily to the apparent rise in anti-foreigner sentiment as videos circulated online of Africans sleeping on the streets, being harassed by police, or being locked into their homes under quarantine. The fallout threatens to undermine China's diplomatic efforts in Africa. In recent years, African nations have become key diplomatic and trade partners to Beijing, with China's trade on the continent worth $208 billion last year. In a statement on Sunday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Qiu Liyan denied China had been singling out foreigners. The governments of Nigeria, Uganda and Ghana also reportedly summoned their respective Chinese ambassadors over the incidents. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is out of hospital after a week of treatment for persistent COVID-19 symptoms. This is as the UK faces its fourth week of lockdown, with the government set to review by Thursday whether social distancing measures can be relaxed. Ministers are required by law to assess whether the rules are working based on expert advice after 3 weeks of telling Britons to stay at home. Wales Health Minister said last week that the coronavirus lockdown would remain for several more weeks at the very least. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon warned there was no likelihood or prospect of measures being lifted after the Easter weekend. As of Sunday, the UK's total number of hospital deaths linked to coronavirus reached 10,612. South Korea plans to send 600,000 coronavirus testing kits to the United States on Tuesday. President Donald Trump made the request for testing kits in a telephone call with President Moon Jae-in at the end of March, as the United States was grappling with fast-growing outbreaks in many states. The kits were made by 2 of the 3 companies that secured approval late last month from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. South Korean companies have previously shipped test kits to U.S. cities, including Los Angeles, but this would mark the first bulk order from the U.S. federal government. South Korea has largely managed to bring its coronavirus cases under control without major disruptions.
Up next, sport. Swiss prosecutor drops case against Blatter. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. Switzerland federal prosecutor is about to close its investigation into former FIFA president Sepp Blatter's deals with the Caribbean Football Union to sell World Cup broadcasting rights. The Office of the Attorney General said it has informed all the parties of its intention to close the case. The 84-year-old Swiss, who led FIFA until 2015, was accused of selling TV rights to the CFU for the 2010 and 2014 World Cups for $600,000, said to be far below the market value at the time. A former Chelsea and England goalkeeper Peter Bennett has died at 78 after a long illness. Bennett was described by Chelsea as a goalkeeping superstar of the 1960s and 1970s and one of the club's all-time great players. He was part of England's 1966 World Cup winning squad, but was unused throughout the tournament. Bennett made 7 England appearances and featured in the 1970 World Cup quarter-final defeat by West Germany. That is in the news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.